Hello, my name is Vince Wilson, and I'm excited to be applying to the brand program at the University of Wyoming, as well as for y'all to get to know me a little bit better as I answer these next 5 questions as part of the application process. And so to start off with the first question, I want to talk about a meaningful experience for myself that has really shaped myself as a learner and has contributed greatly to my drive and ambition to continue to learn and grow in a variety of different educational fields. So I started off at the University of Idaho in 2011 as a fire ecology and management major. After the first year, I switched to a forestry major, and it was during that second year that my grades started to slip, and I was not doing the things that I needed to be doing to be a successful student. And so after the spring semester in 2013, I made the hard decision to basically not go back to school. And I felt at that time that if I continued to just push through school, it was not going to end well for myself. And so that led me to ultimately taking 2 years off from school. And it was during those 2 years of time that I worked a variety of different jobs. I started with the U.S. Forest Service on a fire crew. I washed cars, and I even took a wilderness first responder class, which ultimately started the whole idea of healthcare for myself as something that I would be interested in. And during that time off from school, I kept getting the notion that I wanted to use my brain. I wasn't exactly sure what that meant at the time, but then ultimately going back to school in 2015 as a history major really solidified the idea of this is what I need to be doing, and I could feel a difference in my attention and drive to continue to get better with learning, which ultimately led me to get on the dean's list for one of the semesters at the University of Idaho. As well as it has continued as I have taken the pre-nursing credits and all the different science classes that I've needed to take, as there's not a lot of carryover between history classes and science classes. And so that has just continued my interest and drive to learn and learn new things has just continually evolved over the past 11 years now, and has led me to where I am now, which is applying for the brand program. So then that also leads to the following question, which is, why nursing? After all the different jobs that I've done and different things that I've looked into, what is it about nursing that for myself I am attracted to? And so to start off with, to carry over from the last question, is for me, I look at nursing as a field that's always evolving. It's always changing. There's always new things to learn, and it's not a stagnant field, which is something that I have noticed over the past several years, that if I can be in a field where I can continually learn and feel a sense of I'm not feeling stagnant and I'm continuing to grow, is something that I greatly want to have in a career moving forward. And that has kind of led me to where I am now. And then on top of that, my wife and I have a wonderful 9-month-old little girl named Stella, who was born about 2 weeks early. And during her 6-week appointment checkup, the nurses noticed, or the nurse in the room noticed, that she was turning a little blue. And so that led us on a 3-month odyssey of her being put on oxygen due to being hypoxic. And that whole process, which was very stressful for my wife and I, was greatly helped by the nurse interactions that we had, whether it was in the clinic setting or also during the hospital stays that we had for a sleep study to see if she would be able to be off of oxygen, and also the initial 3 days that we spent in the hospital as she first got on oxygen, and they were doing all sorts of different tests for her. And so I was able to see the nurses interact with us to help reassure us and help to make sure that they were doing what they needed to be doing, and tests were being done to try to figure out what was going on and to help us through this process. And so being able to see the nurses interact and see what they were able to do for us also further hit home the point that this is something that I want to be doing in the future to help people who were in my wife and I's situation. And then also, as Stella has continued to grow, we've also had a home health nurse come in to make sure that she's gaining weight and eating well, and just general checkup sorts of things to make sure she's on the right track. And so that's also helped me see another side of the nursing field that's outside of the hospital setting, of doing more public health. And so between kind of some personal experiences with hospital settings and also some public health settings really shows the vast nature of the nursing field, and having some of those personal experiences really makes it seem like that this is something that I am strongly interested in and continue to evolve with. And then lastly, I currently work at Cottonwood Health and Rehabilitation Center. And through that, of working there, I've really, really enjoyed the interactions with the residents, and it has been one of the best parts of the job, and being able to help them with a variety of different tasks or things they need help with, even if it's just getting them something to drink, and then also just continuing to learn from them and get to know them on a deeper level than just, hello, how are you kind of thing. And those sorts of interactions I see as something that's very prominent in the nursing field. And with that, it's something that drives me into the field, is those personal interactions and connections that I can make. And that's where I kind of am really drawn into the nursing field. And then so for the next question, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach with the diverse team aspect. As nursing is one of those fields where you're working with all sorts of different people at different education levels and knowledge levels, and you have to figure out how to work with everybody to help better care for a patient or a community or a resident or wherever you may be working. So I worked for the U.S. Forest Service for a total of 4 summers on a district fire crew. And with that, depending on what was needed throughout the country, they would either be sending people from the forest out on a hand crew or an engine crew assignment. And through my 4 years, I did a variety of different assignments, different states that I went to, and I even went up to Canada for 1 summer. And with, for example, a hand crew assignment, they take about 4 to 5 people from each district to make up a 20-person hand crew, and then you basically go wherever they say that you need to go. And with that, it's taking people that I didn't work with on a normal basis, as I had not as much interaction with the other districts compared to the one that I was working on. And it was one of those things where you come together to achieve a goal of either fire suppression or support in an area that has either a high risk for fire, and they just need some extra help there. And so coming together, and especially in a stressful environment, and making sure that you're able to complete the task and do it safely while there's all sorts of things going on around you, is just a really great experience that I've had. And one of those fires was down in Idaho, and this was during my last year on the U.S. Forest Service. And we get to a fire, and there are air tankers flying overhead dropping retardant. There's a giant smoke plume in front of us, and all 20 of us basically had to put out a hose line to make sure that the fire did not continue to spread. And it was also on one of those too where we were broken into smaller groups, and I was on a carrying a chainsaw, and then my partner carried the gas, and then we would flip on different days, and we were tasked with going into areas that were still burning to cut stuff out and to continue the work that we had started with. And so the Forest Service really had a diverse and unique skill set and people that I worked with from all sorts of different places. And as I was saying, it was a great experience for myself. And carrying over that theme too into the next question, during my first year with the U.S. Forest Service, this was a decision that the crew boss at the time made, and I was not exactly in agreement with him. So it's 2014, and we were on a fire just north of Helena, Montana. And during the day, we were essentially walking around the area that had already been burned and checking for different spots if they were still hot or smoking to try to get them out. And then so the crew boss comes over to me and says, hey, we need to get some people over to put out this downed tree that was still smoking pretty heavily. And this tree was down in an area that was completely black around it, so it wasn't going to catch anything else on fire, and it was also on a very steep slope. And I was like, this doesn't seem like a very good idea, because I don't want the tree to roll, I don't want to fall, I don't want anything to happen to myself. And so through the process of talking with my crew boss, I then was able to understand more of the reasoning of why that needed to happen, even though initially for myself it was like, this doesn't seem like this is very necessary. And what I learned is that from the road, people who are just driving by can still see this smoke, which then causes them to be either nervous or will call in. And so part of it was like just reassuring the public that this fire that they had seen a few days ago was actually out, and help them be reassured that things were being done and taken care of. And while that was still something that was like, well, this still seems unsafe, he helped walk me through it and, helped me understand why this needed to be done and how to do it in a way that could be done safely. And we were able to take care of that issue with the downed tree, and, no other issues happened at that fire. But that was one of those things where I was able to then pose the question and then be reassured of like, hey, this is why we're doing this task right now. And then so for the last question, I'm going to talk about a situation that I was in where I had some training and I still was trying to be confident in that situation, as I know that with nursing, there's a lot of different situations that can happen, and being able to trust yourself and feel confident can be pretty challenging. So this happened in the summer of 2017 when I worked at Chile, Colorado camps, which is based in Estes Park, Colorado. And that was one of those jobs where, as a backpacking instructor, I needed to have that wilderness first responder certification. And so I had continued to recertify, and at that point I believe I had my first recertification, if not my second recertification. And so the way that the camp is that kids came for either the first or second sessions, and the sessions ran for about 3.5 weeks between June and July. And so this was during the first session in June. We were out on one of the 5-day backpacks in the Arapahoe Roosevelt National Forest, south of Estes Park. And given the fact that it was June, there was still a bunch of snow on the trail. And after we had found camp the night before, we were kind of just hiking around, seeing what we could see. And my co-instructor and I were working to try to figure out, okay, where's the trail, because we can't really see it because of the snow. And then in the process of that, we hear fellow students that we had, or campers that we had, and the group that I was with for my time at Chile was high school aged boys. And so there were about 9 people on the backpack with us. And then we start to hear some of them start asking for help. So we go over there to see what's going on. And one of the campers is leaned up, sitting on the ground against a tree. And this guy was completely out of it. Didn't really know what was going on, and it was at that moment that I had to try to recall all the information from my wilderness first responder class and then try to figure out, okay, how do I sort this information out? How do I figure out what's going on with him? How also do I remain calm? Because obviously his friends and the other guys on the backpack were all around trying to see if he was okay. And that was one of those experiences that was scary for myself, but being able to calmly try to work through the process and, trust that the wilderness first responder had given me enough information and, trying to remember the process of how to do things was challenging, but also a very, good practice for myself. And so, my co-instructor and I were able to help out this camper, and after a little bit he started to come back to, started to be able to answer more questions more thoroughly than he was 15 minutes prior. And it was during this process that we then decided to use the satellite phone and get him out of the backcountry. And what that ended up doing was we split the group in half. And so I stayed with half of the group, and my co-instructor with the one camper and the other half of the group hiked out. And then they met back up with myself and the second half of the group back at the designated camp spot that we had already talked about. And then when we came back to camp a few days later, he was doing fine, had no problems throughout the rest of the session for camp. And so that was great to see, but I don't know what happened to him, but at least we were able to help him out of the backcountry. So those are the questions. I do appreciate y'all for listening and getting to know me a little bit better through these questions, and thank you very much.